11, because I don't understand why we have great teachers, and they're very busy, and they're doing the best job that they possibly can. So I'm trying to understand all the things that come around with them, why they can't raise the proficiency up. And it seems to be a lot of the different things that come along between the teachers, and they get between the teachers and the students for the actual education. I want to see them raise those scores up, and so that they have the choices that they want to make. They're not just, given a few things and they say that's okay. No, they go out there, they have this great proficiency in all the reading and math, and they can just say, hey, look, this is what I want to do.
Okay, thank you. Melissa?
I just want to make crystal clear before I answer the question that the NDA Plus assessment is a different standard that is being measured versus what, like the national gold standard of the National Assessment of Educational Programs. So I want to make sure that your listeners understand that when you're measuring North Dakota students against a national standard, we are ranked number 2 in the country on some metrics like math, and we are above average across every single metric when you're looking at reading scores. NDA Plus is a rigorous, higher level test that North Dakotans hold themselves to. That said, I'm glad that we have a rigorous test. We obviously want to see our proficiency scores raised. That is the absolute #1 goal of the board. But what I also want the listeners to know is that proficiency is measuring grade level or above. So it does not mean that our students are failing. It means that they have a little bit of ways to go to catch up, but they're on their way, and I believe that we are going to have programs and policies that will help them get there.
Greg?
Could you repeat the question?
Yeah, sure. Most recent North Dakota State assessment scores for Fargo Public Schools showed a 38% proficiency rate in reading, 41% math, 35% in science. On a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the highest, how concerned are you about these numbers and what specifically should be done about them?
All right. I wasn't sure about that last part because I didn't really hear anyone mention it yet. So my concern, I would say, I don't know, like a 5. So kind of like Melissa pointed out, we're actually better than every state in the country on average. So I think that's a good thing. But do we have room to improve? Absolutely. But again, this is a nationwide issue. Using the NAEP standardized test score, literally no state has above 40% proficiency. So we are actually doing better than our peers, but that all being said, there's room for improvement. And I think the biggest thing that we can do is improve student attendance. We have abysmal student attendance. And Fargo's not alone in this, but we do have a worse problem than most. We have 1 in 4 kids at Fargo Public Schools are missing more than 10% of their days. And I think kids can't learn if they're not in school. So that's an easy way to fix it.
Okay, thank you. Katie?
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to echo what my board colleagues have said. When people cite around 40% proficiency, they're referring to North Dakota specific benchmarks. We set our benchmarks here higher than almost any other state, and we are actually in line with our state's average. A 40% proficiency rate here does not equal weak performance nationally. Context matters. North Dakota has historically maintained relatively rigorous standards compared to many other states. And just like Melissa mentioned, on the NAEP, the National Assessment of Educational Progress, where we are actually comparing how our students do on the same type of evaluations as kids in other states, we're doing great. We perform at or above average. We're doing very well here. We still have work to do, and if you look to see what districts have some of the best rates in the state, one of them is Northern Cass, and you know who got them there? Dr. Corey Steiner. And you know who just hired him? We did at Fargo Public Schools.
Okay, thank you. Jillian?
Yeah, I appreciate the explanation of NAEP versus NDA Plus. In terms of what can be done and what is being done, I'm not sure if a lot of folks know that we have 2 state laws in regards to how reading should be taught according to how the brain learns to read and the science of reading that has passed 2 sessions ago that requires specific professional development that the district has been in a process of implementing. Learning to read is really hard. And a lot of our higher ed institutions did not teach our educators how to do that. And so there has been a huge system shift that the district's been undergoing, as well as our higher ed institutions, that is underway. During the last session, there was also a law passed in terms of the requirements for math professional development to make sure that it aligned with evidence-based requirements. So there is work underway. And as Katie mentioned, Dr. Steiner and Northern Cass, being a smaller district, was able to implement that a little quicker. I think that as we support our teachers in professional development and focus on individual student growth, we'll be able to continue to close that gap that happened after COVID.
Okay, thank you. All right, Paul, you'll go next on the first on this. You'll go first on the next question.
Oh, did we do Carissa on the first? Okay, I'm sorry, I apologize. Just wanted to make sure on that. And Paul, what do you see as the single biggest challenge facing Fargo Public Schools right now?
I would say the single biggest challenge. I like to form these questions in terms of the fact that we need to concentrate on students. So as we're concentrating on students, we talk about something like the budget, which is a big problem. And I admit Dr. Steiner is trying to lead us down the correct path. I admit he did a good thing about his salary, but still there's a long way to go. And I think that, between whoever gets elected, we'll have to, see what happened in the past and then see, what's going on there, and have to keep an open mind and possibly think outside the box in order to get those things implemented so that we can reduce things in the right area. But again, always concentrating on the students and making sure that they have the number one thought in mind, so that a student is always getting the things that they need, the teachers are getting the things that support the students. And so balancing the budget that way is a priority.
Okay, thank you. Melissa?
Sure. I also agree that one of our largest challenges is fiscal, and even though our revenue and funding is remaining relatively stable, our costs are going up in a lot of different ways. As a lot of people who've watched the news have seen, in the last year, we were operating at around a $4 million deficit that needed to be reset. And so going forward, I think we're going to have to as a board, guide administration in a really thoughtful and intentional way to make sure that we are focusing on programs that can amplify student achievement, and having to make really hard and difficult decisions when we need to cut programs that aren't directly tied to student success. And I think navigating a budget in an exceptionally hard environment is challenging.
Okay. All right. Greg?
I'm going to take a different tack. Usually I would say budget, but I'll have more thoughts on that, I'm sure, later on, because honestly, I really think the biggest challenge we're facing is student attendance. I know I mentioned it earlier, but I think it's worth mentioning again. Kids cannot learn if they're not in school. Fargo has more chronic absenteeism than our peers in North Dakota, and we're double digits percentage higher. It's like 12-14% higher rate of chronic absenteeism. And how we address that is very complicated, because it is not just one reason why kids aren't coming to school, but there are a ton of things that we can do to maybe try and get them to come back, right? We can use data to trigger early interventions before it becomes a habit. We could do home visits, boosting extracurricular activities. We know that students who participate in extracurricular activities have a much higher rate of student achievement, and that will get them into schools.
All right, thank you. Katie?
Thanks. I'll echo what a few other people said. I think the biggest challenge right now is our budget. The reality is that school districts are facing rising costs that significantly outpace our state funding increases. For example, when the legislature provides a 2% increase, that does not keep up with inflation. That does not keep up with the cost of living. We have insurance, utilities, salaries, other operational costs, and we have to make adjustments when those are growing at a faster rate than what the state is willing to fund us at. About 80% of our budget is people. It's people, and so if we cannot keep our mill levy where it is, if we cannot get the state legislature to keep up with inflation, it's going to hurt people, and it's going to end up hurting ultimately our students if we don't have funding to do the work we need to do.
Okay, thank you. Jolene?
I think teacher retention and recruitment is a big piece. If you look at any industry who is worried about on an annual basis whether 25% of the folks on your staff in a building are going to turn over, makes it really difficult to continue to make progress with student achievement and reaching your goals. So I think that is complicated by the budget situation. North Dakota continues to move backwards when it comes to teacher pay, and so we need to continue to advocate at the state level to have more of a priority for education spending in our state. And beyond that, in the things that we can control, making sure that Fargo is a district where educators want to work, so we have that retainment. And by streamlining our strategic plan and making sure that everyone is on the same page and we know what the goals are, I think is one piece that we can control and that the district is working towards right now.
Okay, thank you. Carissa?
May I hear the question one more
Yeah,
time?
sure can. Yep. Bonnie, that was your question.
Yes. What do you see as the single biggest challenge facing Fargo Public Schools right now?
I would say from the research that I've done, the most important thing that we need to address right away is academics. That is the number one problem. I would have argued that finances were the number one problem, but when I look at the objective, what the purpose of the Fargo School Board is. The purpose is for them to ensure the academic success of the kids of our community. And the research and data shows that that's not happening. So are the finances an issue? Yes. Are we in a challenging economy? Yes. I'm a business owner. I know what it's like to cut costs, and it's really hard, and we can find those ways, but I would say the number one job of the board is to educate our students, and so I would argue that it would be academics.
And I'm sorry, what was the challenge then? The single biggest challenge was what specifically, Carissa?
In academics? Well, from the research that I did, it's really hard to find what books are they reading, curriculum. The document that shows the curriculum in line with North Dakota law is very lengthy and really hard to find. What are they actually teaching in classrooms? So is phonics being taught? Are the basics being taught? K through 2, K through 2nd grade has tablets in school. I would argue that we shouldn't have tablets at that developmental
Understood.
age.
Thank you. I just want to make sure. So you're saying the biggest challenge is to find out what's actually being taught in the classrooms.
Yeah, and
that's your answer.
What's really going on with the proficiency rates?
Okay, thank you for that. I wanted to make sure we understood your answer to that question. Thank you. Next question, and this will be Melissa. You'll get this one first today. According to the district's standard of efforts reporting, the pace of growth in student enrollment over the last 5 years has been greatly outpaced by growth in the administrative budget, something like 12 to 1. Is that appropriate, and if so, why?
Yeah, so I will say I was on the planning committee when we received the standard of effort draft, and I think we all made remarks about how we have an administration budget that is, I guess, different than a lot of our peer schools that we're comparing ourselves to. I think that what's also important about Fargo Public Schools is we are a go-to school for special education, and that's incredibly expensive, and it takes a lot of administration to ensure that we're complying with the federal and state laws that we need to be when we're giving those very important services to our students. So I think of anything, we have been a board that embraces information even when it's not positive, and we want to take a close look at it, and that is something that we're going to be seeing in the next few board meetings, and I think we'll have a good conversation about it. So I can't say definitively that that's absolutely a problem, but I think it's something that has been noted as an outlier.
Okay, thank you. Greg?
Yeah, I think if it's not really a secret, my thoughts on this, go to my website, gregforfargo.com, or pretty much any of my public content, you'll see that. Yeah, Fargo is the most top-heavy administrative district in North Dakota. Like, we spend more, not just like at an absolute dollar amount, but at a per pupil amount. We spend more than everybody else. And I would rather use those funds in a way that supports our educators and the adults who are actually in the room making an impact with students. So I think we do need to reduce the amount that we spend on administrators. If we could get our per pupil spending down to just tie second place. If we were just the second most top-heavy district in the state, I did the math, it's almost $5 million per year that we could be saving.
Okay, thank you. Katie?
Yeah, thanks. So I'm not on the planning committee that reviewed this, but I do listen to their meetings, so I am familiar with this. And I do know that when we went through our most recent budget cuts, about $500,000 of that cut came from administration. So I think it's very well known within the district, within our cabinet, and within our leaders that this is an area that needs to be addressed and that this is an area that can be cut. I do think it's important to keep in mind, though, that similar to what Melissa said, we have a more robust special ed program than a lot of other districts. We also have more buildings, and we have smaller target sizes for our classes, and we have more paras than a lot of other districts. And so when you start to look at these other systems that we have in place, sometimes they need a little more admin and a little more structure to support some of these more robust systems that we have. So I think the answer to this is yes, we need to address it, and also we need to keep in mind the uniqueness of our district.
Okay, thank you. Jolene?
Yeah, as Katie alluded to, I think that every budget requires context and takes a little time to dig into it. I think one of the challenges that occurred was there was a lot of one-time funding that came from ESSER and COVID dollars. It's hard to use one-time funding in a meaningful way, and I think it was a short runway and maybe took a little bit too long to back off of that, and we're seeing that sort of now. And Dr. Steiner's and the cabinet are working to right-size some of those pieces. I think they would say that there's going to be some attrition and other pieces that they're working to realign. And so I think it's important we don't have a knee-jerk reaction and that we look at the data and we look at the pieces and make sure that we're maintaining the experience that we have for our students and our educators and thinking about that going forward.
Okay, thank you. Carissa?
May I have the question again, please?
Yeah, you sure can. According to district standard of efforts reporting, the pace of growth in student enrollment over the last 5 years has been greatly outpaced by growth in the administrative budget, something like 12-1. Is that appropriate, and why?
I don't think it's appropriate. I think that we are administratively top heavy for sure. When you look at the deep dive of the finances, I think that throwing more money at a broken system won't fix our problems. So I don't want to say that we need more money for administration. Granted, I do recognize that our teachers do a great job. That's why I'm concerned, but I'm not quite at the 10 yet because we have great educators in our area that just need support. Do we need administration? Yes. Do we have too much? I would argue yes.
Okay, thank you. Paul?
I'm also going to say that, yeah, I think the system is top heavy. I just did some research looking around and compared it to Bismarck, where we basically, broke it down to how many administration per 1,000 students. Kind of trying to be fair because the schools are all different sizes. But on average, we have one extra administrator for every 1,000 students than over Bismarck does. And Bismarck manages to balance their budget with a whole lot less mills. So I'm hoping that what we can do is, and I heard some of the things here, and I agree that Fargo is one of those places where we've accepted a lot of things. We're starting to get some of the bigger school district kinds of problems, but there's going to have to be a way that says, okay, again, you're going to get tired of this. Put the students first. What is it that's going to raise the proficiency levels so that we can, have a decent thing that's going on, but yet balance it and not have too many administrators, too many chiefs, and not enough Indians.
All right, thank
Okay,
you.
Thank you.
Next question, Greg is first. We've heard quite a bit about teacher burnout in recent years. Many have left the profession. What can be done to prevent that, and what role does a school board member play in solving it?
Sure, yeah. Again, go to my website. I got frequently asked questions section. You can find a probably more in-depth answer on this than I can give in what I could probably got 40 seconds left. So first of all, yeah, it's a problem. 40% of North Dakota teachers plan to retire as teachers. That's not good. That means, you know, we need to recruit more, and we need to make sure that the ones that we have do stick around long enough to retire. So yeah, I think easy answer would be, yeah, just we need to increase wages. Teachers haven't gotten more than 1.8% raises for several years. That needs to change. But not every solution requires a financial investment. We need to think outside the box, find creative ways to relieve the burden on our teachers. Can we reduce the amount of paperwork that they have to do every single day? Can we make their PD actually, you know, relevant and not something that just drains their energy?
Thank you. Katie?
Sure. So one thing I do want to point out is if you take a look at our website, our retention rate is 92.6%. That means 92.6% of our teachers have returned from one year to the next. That's actually really, really quite fabulous. So burnout is a real thing, and we are working to try to protect the profession, to make the job more relevant, to make it more fulfilling within our buildings. But we at Fargo Public Schools are really doing great with a 92.6% retention rate. Teacher retention is also one of our district priorities. That's something that we look at. We measure certified staff retention. We look at what is adding and subtracting from that. That's actually part of our goals. I do think as a board member, a big part of it, like I said, is protecting the profession. That's something we do with our governmental affairs committee. We, when state legislation when they're in session, we oppose mandates. We oppose the legislature meddling in our schools and telling our teachers what to do.
Thank you. Jolene?
We ask schools to do a lot of things. There are federal requirements, state requirements, and then local initiatives. And so that becomes overwhelming for our educators and our districts. As a district, we don't get to necessarily control all of the requirements and what we do, but I think having a strategic plan that's really clear and that doesn't have too many initiatives is really important. In education, after working with districts across the state, we sometimes like bright, shiny things, and then the pendulum swings to the next initiative, but we don't necessarily stop doing anything. And I think it's really important as a district that we have a clear plan and vision, that we can work together, and that we can take those requirements that maybe we don't choose to do and implement them in a meaningful way. And that was a lot of the work that I did through Regional Education Association, taking those state laws like on reading and figuring out how can we implement them in a meaningful way that get the outcomes and that are reasonable for our educators to execute on and measure the impact of them.
Thank you. Carissa?
I would say developing a vision for our teachers and our students and helping them see beyond we go to school to get a degree to then go work a job. I think that education is a lot deeper than that. I think that we need to give them vision for the good and beautiful life, that there is so much meaning. Yes, the STEMs are so important, but at the same time, philosophy, the arts, that stuff is so valuable to us as a human with our soul. Keeping that in mind. And so directly to teacher retention and their burnout, I think that they need to know that the administration has their backs. If there's a disciplinary issue in a classroom, they need to know that they can go to their administrators and that their administrators would have their back. And then we keep the administrators accountable to the standards that we have in place. But I would argue for that.
Thank you. Paul?
Like Greg, I'm married to a teacher, so I see things that, you know, I'm wondering if in the retention, are we retaining the right teachers? As I've seen some teachers who they're doing a great job, but they're getting this burnout and they're leaving, and you kind of sit there and wonder, that was a great teacher. Why did we lose them? And I think that's part of the question that we need to answer and dig down for that root cause. And I think it spans across a lot of the different things that we have going on. You know, how do we get them into the school? on how do we treat them after they're in there, so finding out from some of those senior teachers who are doing a good job, say, okay, what can we do to recruit the better teachers as, they're coming out of school, maybe something out of the box, like more internships, so that then when they get there, you pair a new teacher with a more experienced teacher and help them bring it up so that we are retaining the right people at the right times.
And Melissa?
I do want to echo what Katie said about this, and because I'm so proud of this statistic that 92.6% of our educators returned from 1 year to this year. But what I think we as a board need to encourage administration to do is really look into our data, and we've gotten a lot better at that. We're using a survey called the Vital Survey, and on a lot of those metrics, we're doing really great. Our teachers feel supported, particularly in the first 5 years of their career. So I think that says to me we have a great mentorship program. We need to keep that going. But where we're not doing well and where we need to focus is that our teachers have said their professional development does not feel valuable and that they need meaningful opportunities to be heard. Those are two concrete things that I think we can absolutely fix. I think we can guide the people who are instructing on professional development to make sure that it's relevant for teachers, important for them to have. And I think giving teachers opportunities to be heard is absolutely essential to prevent burnout.
Okay, thank you. All right, Katie, you'll go first on this next question. North Dakota is advancing school choice initiatives, including legislation for education savings accounts to fund private school tuition. The school voucher bill was also vetoed in the last legislative session. What are your thoughts on these two things and what they mean for Fargo Public Schools?
Sure. So basically what you're referring to is any type of voucher program, and I adamantly oppose voucher programs. Voucher programs weaken public schools by pulling funding away from the schools responsible for educating every single student. We need to pay attention to what is happening in other states, including my home state of Iowa. My hometown district of Cedar Rapids is already experiencing this impact, and if you take a look at it, it is rough. It is decimating that system. Public schools take every single student who walks through our door. We do not get to choose which students we serve, and we would never do that. Public schools are accountable to the public. School board members are elected by the community. Meetings are open, budgets are public, and the community has a voice in the process. The level of public accountability, this level of public autonomy does not exist in our private schools. Public funds are for public schools, period.
Okay, thank you. Jolene?
So families have the ability to choose the setting that's best for their kids through school choice, and I support that. And I don't think we necessarily need to compare apples and oranges when we're talking about public school versus private school, because the overwhelming majority of North Dakota students are going to be served through public school. We have a responsibility as a state in our Constitution to provide public education for all students, and I do not support using public funding for vouchers or for private schools. And as a parent and a taxpayer, I will not support or vote for anyone for school board who does support that.
Okay, thank you. Carissa?
May I have the question again, please?
Yeah, sure. North Dakota is advancing school choice initiatives, including legislation for education savings accounts to fund private school tuition. A school voucher bill was also vetoed in the last legislative session. What are your thoughts on those two things and what they mean for Fargo Public Schools?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I'm not operating on any notes, so that's why I wanted to make sure I heard the question again. I would argue that, so the number one thing that I'm focused on is, okay, academic success in the kids of our community, that is so important. But at the same time, Fargo's got a lot of money, and I would argue that we're inefficiently spending it because, anyways, so if I'm gonna help the public produce results in the finances of actually getting us in a better spot financially, how do we do that? And I would argue, I used to believe that public funds were only for public schools, but then I realized, who keeps the board accountable? Well, it's supposed to be the public, but I would argue that we need everybody in our community, no matter who you are, no matter how much money you make, everybody needs accountability. The board also needs accountability, and I would say school choice affords public pressure on the board to really see, are we producing competitive results in our kids so that they won't choose to go to private school?
Okay, thank you. Paul?
So, yeah, I support the school choice kind of for the same things Carissa said. I mean, as a parent, you need to do whatever is best for your child. So if you think you're not getting what you need at the public school, then yeah, you should be, considering private school or homeschool, because you want your child to be the best child that they can be. As far as voucher program, I was kind of up in the air about the voucher program for a little bit, but then I started talking to some teachers who are going to private school. Now, homeschool kids are allowed to come to public schools to do activities, like a sports activity or whatever that happens to be, whatever they're interested in, music activity. So, as far as giving that a voucher the same way as you give a voucher to a private school, because a private school kid then can't come. So maybe they deserve to have their part of the money back as a taxpayer to follow their kid while their kid's in that school.
Okay. Thank you. Melissa?
Sure. So any type of voucher program or school choice program or anything that diverts a penny away from public education is something that I am very much against. For many of the same reasons that my colleagues have echoed. But what's most important to me is that as a public school, we are completely wide open, and I mean that we're transparent. We accept every single student. We educate every single student. We do not turn anyone away. Our finances are so transparent. You can look on our website anytime you'd like and get a clear accounting of the budget. Every single board meeting, we are approving a register of things that have gone out in the budget. Our meetings are absolutely public. The board is accountable. We're voted every 4 years. And I think it's very important to make sure that our public schools are strong and that the best choice that a student could make is to get a public education that's wonderful in North Dakota and Fargo.
All right, thank you. And Greg?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything that Katie and Melissa and Jolene have said. So I won't repeat those, but what I will do is address something that some things Carissa brought up. I mean, accountability, super important, but there's nothing remotely accountable for public funds in a private institution. It's just totally opaque. They don't provide any financial stuff for the public to see. Their boards are not publicly elected, and we don't even know what their academic outcomes are. They don't have to, students at private schools don't have to take standardized tests, so we have no idea how their proficiency rates are. But one thing that we do know, because one private school around here actually publishes it, is their ACT scores. And Fargo Public Schools, if you actually control for demographics, we have better outcomes on the ACT. So private schools don't even get better outcomes that we can even know about.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, next question. Jolene starts us out. How safe are Fargo Public Schools, and what can be done to make them safer?
As a parent with a soon-to-be middle and high school student, I think safety is something that we talk about or hear about. I think there's several concerns when it comes to vaping and fights, and I think it's an ongoing issue that the district is continuing to focus on to train teachers on behavior responses and as well as student connection. I think that we've heard recently at a legislative forum them talking about BAR, I'm going to get the acronym wrong, building assets and reducing risk, thanks. And about how that creates a connection so that we don't have students who are falling through the cracks, that there's a systematic way that we're talking about how our students are doing and that they have a trusted adult in the building who is connected with them. And so I think that there's always more that we can do as a district, including professional development and working with our partners in juvenile justice to see what percentage of students are the ones that are maybe causing most of the issues and what that looks like for them.
Thank you. Carissa?
I would say parents' number one concern is when they drop their kids off at school, will their kid be safe? And I think that we have a lot to learn from the horror situation that happened with the construction workers. that was a really unfortunate situation, and I'm so thankful nobody got hurt. But I think that the Fargo Public School Board should consider the fact that our public schools are weak targets. Could they be people who come in from the outside or students who are in the schools? The reason why I would argue that our public schools are weak targets is because our nation is facing a bunch of shootings. As somebody who spent time overseas, I would say that they're vulnerable targets, and we need to proactively think about what's going to happen in the next 10, 15, 20 years and how we can adjust the budget to back more safety.
All right, Paul?
I think public schools are decently safe. I mean, is anything perfect? No. There's always that one-time scenario. If one dedicated person wants to commit themselves to doing something wrong, they are definitely going to be able to do that. So I think part of the thing here is it's one of those not raising the budget situations, is trying to think outside the box. What can we do to help keep our schools safer, but still not try to throw a whole lot of money at it as far as the budget's concerned? And one of the things I thought of is, I think about my dad, who still gets up at 5 o'clock in the morning, whether he wants to or not. I think it's just ingrained in him. But, and he likes seeing his grandchildren, so he might be one person to volunteer to say, hey, look, I am going to go to this school, and you can vet him, and you can say, hey, look, okay, I'm going to be there to, watch the kids get off the bus. Plus, that alleviates the teachers from having to watch the kids from getting off the bus, too. And you wouldn't have to pay them.
Thank you. Melissa?
Sure. So I think safety is a really broad topic and can mean a lot of different things. But just because it was brought up, I want to talk about the swatting incident that happened at Fargo North now several weeks ago. And I'm speaking more as a parent who had 2 children that were in a lockdown situation. And given some back context, I want to make sure that your listeners know that the district has made a very concerted effort to do the best practice standard training of ALICE for when there's ever a shooting situation. Our teachers are trained, our administrators are trained, and I can tell you that Fargo North's response to the swatting incident was nearly flawless, and I would not say that without absolutely knowing that I don't think that they could have done a better job, as I guess a way that you can say it. We got immediate communication from the school about what was happening. Every time we were updated, we got another alert to say what was going on, that all students were safe. And Dr. Steiner worked very well with our new chief of police. And so the coordination between the Fargo Police Department and Fargo Public Schools was excellent. And I think that's a testament to the training that we've done for our staff.
Thank you. Greg?
Yeah, Fargo Public Schools are incredibly safe. I have never heard us referred to as a weak target ever. And in all the years I've been on the board, I haven't seen any piece of data to say otherwise about the physical safety of our students. And I think one thing maybe that folks probably don't know about that may lead to odd conclusions is that probably one of the only areas that we are not totally transparent has to do with the safety protocols of our schools. We do not share every piece of information about how secure our schools are and what our strategies are for keeping them safe, because if someone with ill intentions got a hold of all of our safety plans and security features, they could use those to exploit us, but we have them. They're just not available for bad actors to access.
Thank you. And Katie?
Yeah, thanks. We definitely prioritize student safety and well-being. Currently, about 85% of students report that they feel like they belong at school. They feel safe within our schools. And while that's encouraging, there is always room for improvement. I think when you talk about safety and threats, you think externally somebody from the outside could come in, cause problems, or you think internally is somebody internally causing the problem. We put a lot of time and effort into our school culture. We have restorative practices, we have multi-tiered systems of supports, we have BAR that was mentioned earlier, we do safety audits, and we do all of this because students are not going to hurt each other or hurt themselves if they feel like they belong there, if they feel connected to their classmates, if they feel like school is relevant. That's why we are prioritizing how they feel feel? Do they feel like they belong? And that's another reason we're prioritizing attendance. In terms of external threats, our buildings are incredibly safe, and the reality is our long-range facility plan actually addresses where we are lacking in some of those safety areas. We also have a fabulous relationship with the Fargo Police Department, and we do drills on a regular basis to ensure we have procedures in place.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much here. This question, Carissa, you'll get this one first. You'll get this one first, okay?
Sorry.
That's all right. How do we ensure that students are being taught how to think in school and not what to think when it comes to politics and ideology?
That is a great question, and I love that you asked it. I would say I don't even know how to address it, because I would say that we don't even have an apologetics class in the public school system. And I'm going to make a very bold claim, but Christianity is the only religion that actually is an evidence-based religion. That's what our country's founded on. The West has benefited significantly from biblical principles. And if we're not teaching that our educators should have moral values inside of their hearts and teaching our kids, do not lie, do not steal, do not murder, I think that the goal of education is to really instill principle and morality into our children and then critically think through from that lens. So that's more of a philosophical answer, but I would say that that's just something that I'm not hearing people talk about at these debates.
Okay, thank you. Paul?
I would say it short sums up with, I shouldn't know what a teacher's politics are. Okay, so if you're let's take a history teacher, you should be teaching the interesting things around a certain environment that had happened in the past, and you shouldn't really understand that that teacher may or may not be for or against whatever, politics may have been involved with that situation. The teachers have got to be able to pull themselves back and teach both sides. And then when you go home and your parents ask you, what did you learn today in school? One thing you don't say is, oh yeah, my teacher learned how to do this, really liberal thing. And I'm like, no, that's wrong. And here, let me help you. And I think there's a lot of issues that, parents need to get more involved with. We talked about, the ideology. I think some of that stuff is taught at home.
Okay, thank you. Melissa?
Sure. So I was raised by educators. I trust educators, and one of my fundamental beliefs is that teachers do go to school to learn the curriculum and the process to teach students how to think. I was a product of Fargo Public Schools. I do not recall anybody ever teaching me what to think. It was more, how to develop a deep, thoughtful analysis. As a parent in this district, I have not witnessed any sort of ideological or political, parts of my kids' days. I think they're learning how to be, really great students, and I think we also do incorporate the social emotional part of education, because I think, as society has developed, that's become a critical part of being a learner, and I think we do that well.
Thank you. Greg?
Yeah, so I'm going to address the question in a probably boring way, but I think it's literally the answer of, so how do we know we're teaching kids how to think instead of what to think? First, open records laws. You can make an open records request for anything on our teachers' computers at any time. You can find out exactly what our curriculum is. It's just open. You can, as a citizen of Fargo, you don't even have to be a citizen of Fargo. Anyone, anywhere, can make an open records request and find out exactly the curriculum that's being taught in our schools. Moreover, we just developed our profile of a learner. It's not in place yet, but we just finalized what that is. And one of the absolute top 5 traits that we want our students to have when they leave Fargo Public Schools is critical thinking. We're not saying, oh, we want them to think X, Y, or Z politically. We just want to make sure they can think critically.
Okay. Thank you. Katie?
Sure. So first of all, we are moving towards evidence-based reporting, and I want to point out that evidence-based reporting is straightforward. It says that grades should accurately and consistently reflect what students are able to do. It's not saying what students think, it's what they are able to do. And if you look at evidence-based reporting, oftentimes that highest level of rating has words like think, analyze, develop. They're action words, that they are doing things. They're active learners in the process. We're not just spitting information. We're not just giving them information for them to spit out later. I would actually agree with Paul that our students should never know the political views of our teachers. And as far as I know, they don't. I have had a social studies teacher say that teachers got mad at him because they thought he was too liberal, and or parents got mad at him because they thought he was too liberal. And that exact same teacher had parents get mad at him because they thought he was too conservative. He was doing the right job if he had those parents confused. Greg is completely right. Our portrait of a learner, what we want them to leave the district with is skills in communication, critical thinking, respect, accountability, and leadership. We're not telling them what to think. We're teaching them how to be leaders and how to think for themselves.
Okay.
Steve, would you repeat the whole question?
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you.
How to ensure that students are being taught how to think in school and not what to think when it comes to politics and ideology?
Yeah, I think the simple answer is be in a school. See what is happening, and you will have no questions. I think professionally, I have been in schools at all grade levels, seeing the learning and what's going on, whether they were planned visits or not. And as a parent, you have that interaction. When you go and observe a teacher and you can tell that there's a show being put on, you know, because the students are like, why are you doing that today? Right? Like you can't make that up. And so I think I've heard Superintendent Levi Bachmeyer talk recently about the nationalization of politics in education in North Dakota and how we have to get that out. And I think that this sort of question is an example. And I think I also heard Carissa talk a little bit about advocating for that as well. I think when we trust our teachers and when you get in and actually see what is happening in schools, this isn't a question. Our kids are learning to think critically, and that means that they have all sorts of thoughts, agree and disagree with each other on a wide variety of a spectrum. What they're learning is pretty amazing.
We have time to sneak one more in before our break?
I think so.
Should we do
Yeah,
that?
we're on a good roll here. So,
Okay, Paul, we're starting with you. Are Fargo Public Schools adequately funded by the state? If not, what should be done about it?
Adequately funded by the state. I think that they are adequately funded by the state. I say that in terms of, I think there's a lot of things, the Fargo Public School takes in a lot of money. And I think, again, getting back to the budget question we talked about earlier, the idea is then to get back and say, okay, how do we spend that money? Because it's out there, it's ready. But what we need to do is, go back and, like I said, go back to the student level. What is it going to take to get the students learning at a proficient level? What does it take for the teachers to, be there for the students? So I think that they are getting enough money from the state. It's just how we're spending it.
Melissa?
Sure. So I sort of had a bird's eye view of this as the negotiations chair committee during our last legislative session, and we were really hopeful that we would get an increase in funding that would allow us to put more money into our salary matrix. That did not happen. So I can say, quite frankly, from being able to pay our educators what we want to pay our educators, no, we did not get the funding that we want. I don't know what that percent would look like, what it would be, but I think what we need to do is to make sure that the state knows how important those dollars are to our system. And I think specifically one of the very first things we do after we find out what our budget is we negotiate the teacher contract. And I think to keep our great teachers where they are, I would like to see that, that percentage increase.
All right, Greg?
Yeah, I don't think that Fargo Public Schools, or any school because it's the same funding formula, is getting adequate funding from the state. And that is a historic trend. We are now, that report earlier this week, maybe like we're 41st, 42nd in spending or in teacher salary. We used to spend 15% of our state budget on education, and then that's dropped to closer to 10%. I think probably the starkest way to put it is that our teachers, their annual raises, and all of our staff, their annual raises have been maybe half of the cost of living for too many years in a row. My wife's a teacher. I've seen her pay stub, and it is absolutely not even close to keeping up with the cost of living.
Thank you. Katie?
Yeah, I would agree that the state legislature is absolutely not funding public schools adequately. Like I mentioned before, they gave us a 2% and a 2% increase. That doesn't keep up with inflation. It doesn't keep up with the cost of living. We have a lot of really amazing programs. We have something called the Explorer Academy. We use our BAR program. A lot of these programs are running off grants and that we're finding money in other ways. If we want to sustain these, they need to adequately fund us. Right now, our new teachers in the district make under $50,000 a year, and I think somebody coming out of college with a 4-year degree who's licensed and certified should 100% be making at least $50,000, and we just don't have the funds to do that. Over the next 5 years, we're probably going to have about 150 teachers eligible for retirement. We have to attract these teachers in. We learned the other day in a meeting that the state of Hawaii, which operates as one school district, they gave a $10,000 bonus to anyone who was a special ed teacher to help fill those roles for their state's most vulnerable youth. Our state legislature needs to think seriously about what they want for our teachers and how do we attract and retain teachers to do this important work.
Thank you. Jolene?
Yeah, I think school funding has a lot of different layers and buckets, and how we look at that is really important. There's the state formula funding, which mentioned has been on sort of a percentage increase, and I think starting to think about it in terms of how we prioritize that as a state is important. There are other initiatives that get funded by the legislature that maybe are competitive grant funding going out or go through DPI's budget, but then that's for 2 years or it's for 3 or 5 years. And so then we run into that issue of not being able to sustain something in that sort of bright, shiny initiative thing where we're now having to cut back after having something. And so I would advocate, instead of doing those initiatives, putting that more towards the school formula of funding rather than having those ups and downs of some of that grant funding, so you have that sustainability. And then the second piece that's really important is the special ed formula. We are not keeping up with the costs of some of the complex needs that as a public school we need to serve these students, and that's something the legislature is looking into, and I hope it's something that they'll increase in this next session.
Thank you. And Carissa?
If I'm understanding the financial documents that are somewhat transparent, they're not entirely transparent. I would argue, okay, so if I don't have the number wrong, it's 33% of the budget or 30% of the budget, and that's a significant portion of the budget. But when I think about it, if they make a mandate, should they bring funds in to enforce that mandate? Yes, I would argue for that. However, throwing more money at a broken system will not work. And so, I lost my train of thought. Give me one moment. When I think about a business, from a business standpoint, if I want to ensure that no matter whether we make sales or not, payroll will always be made, I would never put a teacher salary under an outsourced source of revenue. And so I would argue that we need to shift things around in the budget or in the funds to make sure that we're paying teachers competitively within our own local dollars.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Good time for a break here as we've gone through our first batch of questions. Thanks to the candidates for hanging with us here. We're going to take a 4-minute break here, and we're going to be back with more questions for these candidates. So we appreciate their time being here today. This is WZFG Dilworth and WDAY Fargo. We'll be back with more of the Fargo School Board Candidate Forum right after this.
Unplanned home breakdowns are not fun, but your comfort is crucial. Laney's makes it easier on you with their monthly payment plans. With no money down for qualified applicants, don't wait, don't worry. Call Laney's for details on their monthly payment plans. When it comes to comfort, Laney's brings it home.
We all know someone struggling after a stroke, concussion, or a serious infection. Someone who just isn't getting better. There is another path toward healing. Swanson Hyperbaric Medicine in Fargo, located on 25th Street across from Hope Lutheran Church, is the largest and most advanced hyperbaric facility in the country. Using pure oxygen under pressure, hyperbaric therapy helps heal oxygen-starved tissue from stroke, brain injury, diabetic wounds, radiation damage, and infections like osteomyelitis. It's safe, painless, and non-invasive, and uses no drugs. Just oxygen, air pressure, and time working together naturally. This hospital-quality facility is staffed by certified clinical providers and certified hyperbaric technicians, using the safest, most modern chambers available. Make your provider aware of this option. Affordable care and financial assistance are available for those who qualify. Learn more at SwansonHyperbarics.com. Again, that's SwansonHyperbarics.com.
Spring is here. Wow, have you seen your rims lately? We've been busy at Rim Tech fixing winter damage, bent rims, curb rash, scratches, you name it. Call us at 701-715-0544 because our schedule is filling up fast. If your wheels took a beating this winter, now's the time to get on the list. At Rim Tech, we make your rims look like new again without the costly replacements. Stop by and see us in West Fargo. Rim Tech, because details matter.
Didn't catch my show? No worries. Listen to the Jay Thomas podcast. Thanks to Hot Spring Spas and Pool Tables 2. Every day made better. Visit Hot Spring Spas and PoolTables2.com. That's Hot Spring Spas and PoolTables2.com. Oh, man, there is nothing better than the aroma of tangy, tender barbecue at JD's Barbecue and Catering in downtown Fargo.
I love their tender, slow-roasted beef brisket, fall-off-the-bone barbecue ribs, and pulled pork with choices of sides and sauces.
Yeah, JD's Barbecue and Catering makes any event a huge success. From work events to grad parties, you're going to love JD's Barbecue.
You can forget everything, let them do the work, and just enjoy the flavor.
With delicious food from JD's Barbecue and Catering, Main Avenue, next to Tailgaters, downtown Fargo.
Stop taking diesel pickups to those part-time truck shops. Take your diesel to the truck experts, ATI Diesel. You want your truck fixed right the first time, right? You don't want someone who works on trucks sometimes. When your diesel pickup is making noises, shaking, rattling, or is sluggish, ATI Diesel is the place to get the job done right the first time. So if your truck is not right, get your you-know-what into ATI. They know diesel trucks. It's what they do. With their new shop, get quicker turnaround so your diesel is back to working the way it should be. ATI Diesel. It's what they do.
Mike Lindell and his employees want to personally thank you for your continued support of MyPillow. Hey, they've got a big allotment of their bed sheets that were earmarked for the big box stores this spring. Well, they did it again. The box stores did not come through, so they're going to pass the savings on to you. No, there is no middleman. So you're going to get wholesale prices on their famous Giza Dream sheets. Love these bed sheets. Queen size, normally $179.96. Your wholesale price is only $69.99. King size, only $79.99. Another amazing deal they're offering is on their premium MyPillows. Queen size, only $18.98, and kings, just $1 more. So go to MyPillow.com, use the promo code WDAY, or call 800-506-9028. Free shipping options available. So remember, go to MyPillow.com, scroll down to the radio/podcast square, and use promo code WDAY, or call 800-506-9028 to get these amazing wholesale offers.
Farmers know all too well the challenges Mother Nature can present. One storm can turn your best ground into a waterlogged nightmare, robbing you of yields and profits. What if you could protect the hard work and tens of thousands of dollars you've invested and put the odds of profitability back in your favor? You can. Hi, this is Blake Sunday with Landmark Companies. Farmers across the region rely on Landmark Companies, your agricultural drainage experts with decades of experience and proven results. We are proud partners of Prinsco, the manufacturer of durable drainage materials. From field evaluation and design to final installation, Landmark handles every step so every acre performs at its best for years to come. Before making any drainage decisions, talk with Landmark Companies and ask about our early order discounts. Visit landmarkteams.com to request your quote today. That's landmarkteams.com. Landmark Companies. Precision drainage proven results.
This is the Fargo School Board Post Debate Show on WDAY Radio and The Flag.
Welcome back to the studios of WDAY Radio. We appreciate you being with us here tonight for the Fargo School Board Candidate Forum. We're very thankful to have 6 of the 7 candidates who are running for office, 3 incumbents and then 3 newcomers here tonight. And we'll be hoping to get one of those 5 spots. So without any further ado, let's get back to our questions here tonight. After one great hour, we appreciate the time of our candidates here this evening. So Melissa will get this first question in session number 2. Should students be allowed to leave class for a political protest? If so, what rules or standards should apply?
So what I think is that, we've touched on absenteeism before, and I think it's important to have kids in school. I think if I were a teacher, I think that what I would try to do is encourage students to be an active member in my class. But I think having students that are engaged in the community is incredibly important. I would encourage them to, learn about issues that they care about and go, practice however they would like. But I think staying in school is a priority.
Okay, thank you. Greg?
This is an interesting question. I've never actually given it much thought. I think that if a student is in good academic standing, I would have no problem with them ducking out for an hour to peacefully protest. I think the right to peacefully assemble and protest is absolutely critical to the American experiment. So, who am I to prevent our young people from actually participating in that? I think if they're falling behind and need that extra hour of classroom instruction, maybe it becomes a question of does the school district step in and prevent that or have a conversation with that student. But generally speaking, yeah, I'm fine with a student if they want to exercise their right to protest peacefully.
Okay, thank you. Katie?
If a student leaves class without permission or without an excuse, like an excuse that fits along with their policy, then it's considered unexcused regardless of the reason that they leave. And I would say that also applies to a political protest. If they're going without parental permission, if they're skipping a class where they're supposed to be there, that is a violation of our attendance policy. They can make that choice, but there could be a consequence to that. When we look at some of the past protests that students did arrange, I believe they were done in the last period of the day, and a lot of students don't have class at that time, so many of the students who were out there were not actually violating any particular type of policy, and I think the students were actually really responsible in setting up the protest in that manner.
Okay, thank you. Jolene?
I think ultimately this is a question for parents. If they excuse their students for this or anything else, so following the district's attendance policy for excused absences, I think to Greg's point that anytime that there is a student who is falling behind because they have chronic absenteeism or have been gone, the district has a plan and a process to address those issues. So it maybe Kate would come into play in that respect.
Okay. Carissa?
I would say Greg did a great job articulating his answer because I think freedom of speech in America is very important, but Fargo Public Schools is in charge of elementary, middle school, and high school. So is that age appropriate? I wouldn't say so, but also is it the parent's decision whether or not to take the kid out for an excused absent? I think that's up to the parent. I would naturally want to say no, but yeah, I actually haven't taken much thought about that.
Okay. Paul?
It's an interesting question. Having been one of those students who maybe left the class once in a while, but the attendance issue is a thing. I mean, if you leave the classroom, you're possibly missing some important education. That being said, I'm not sure that teachers are going to go out and tackle you as you're leaving the room to go do this protest. But you also have to be prepared to, accept the consequences. The consequences at the school are going to be different from the consequences at home. So, I mean, maybe your parents are fully supportive about whatever, protest you're going to, as long as you're doing it peacefully. But at school, there's a certain number of things that you have to get done, one of them being attendance and getting the grades that involve being there. So, no, I don't think they should be out of the school.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Greg is up next. What are your impressions of the job Superintendent Dr. Corey Steiner has done since taking the role about a year ago?
Sure. So I actually get asked this question more often than I ever dreamed I would. So far, so good. I would say he's even exceeded my expectations, and I think I have the receipts to prove this next claim. I am harder on our superintendent than anybody else on the school board. I have found him rated him as non-compliant and suggested changes to stuff he's done more than anyone else. Find me later. I'll literally provide the receipts. It's a public record. That all being said, I still think he's doing an exceptional job, far exceeding my expectations. His engagement with all stakeholders is, I literally don't know how he has the time in the day. He must get up at 4 a.m., have meetings until 9 p.m. I don't know how he does it, but he works with everybody, and I've gotten a lot of good feedback.
Thank you. Katie?
I would echo what Greg was saying. I think Corey Steiner is an exemplary leader, and we are incredibly fortunate to have him here at the Fargo Public Schools. I think a recent example of that is the fact that he requested to freeze his salary because of our budget deficit, because of our budget crisis. That, to me, is the sign of a true leader. We're all in this together. We're stronger together. That includes him. He is incredibly collaborative and communicative. I think he's somebody who is very comfortable living in the world of agreeing to disagree, doesn't really get defensive. I can tell when I go into the schools, people are excited to see him. They're happy to see him. I don't know if I have heard a single complaint about him in the year that he has been with us. And I'm incredibly grateful, and I hope he doesn't leave us.
Thank you. Jillian?
Yeah, not being a current school board member, I have interacted with Dr. Steiner in a number of ways. He was actually a board member for the Regional Education Association where I worked, and so had the opportunity to work with him in that capacity, as well as him being the superintendent at Northern Cass, and to see the innovative things that he did there. And I think one of the things that he did so well, and that I've heard from folks that work in the school, is that he really brings people along. He is not a top-down type of person. The things that he accomplished at Northern Cass required the whole team to approach it together. And I've heard, especially with these budget cuts, him doing that. I think it comes to him very naturally. And then also as a parent, with a middle schooler, one day, of course, you get these things last minute. I have to be to school early, Mom. We're prepping because Dr. Steiner is coming and he wants to talk to us about Portrait of a Learner, and we're going to talk to about it. And also, I'm going to tell him what I think about the new middle school schedule. And he honestly wants to hear that feedback from students and teachers, and does so very naturally. And so I think that I'm very excited that he's our superintendent, and looking forward to potentially working with him as a board member.
Thank you. Carissa?
I'm looking forward to working alongside Dr. Steiner. From everything that I've heard about him, I haven't personally met him, and I'm excited to meet him. But from everything that I've heard from educators to students, people love him. So there's something about Dr. Corey Steiner that I think that we all have something to learn from. I applaud him in freezing his salary. That is not an easy decision, but that is really showing some integrity and also leadership, because we are struggling financially with the Fargo Public Schools. So I do appreciate that, and I'm encouraged by his leadership.
Thank you. Paul?
The impression I've got of Dr. Steiner is, from a personal standpoint, it's kind of limited, but the things that I've heard about him, well, for example, so I go to school board meetings on a fairly regular basis, and I'm not always complimentary, but, stop laughing, but one of the first ones I did was when Dr. Steiner volunteered to freeze his pay. It's like it shows a good leader that he's ready to, put in his skin into the game. And so you really respect that. I appreciate the fact that I hear about him going into the schools a lot more and getting in there and seeing how the schools are operating. I mean, that's where the rubber meets the road. So if he's out there looking at the schools, then he's going to come back with an impression that I'm starting to think that I can trust him to move forward in the way. And then, yeah, I'm looking forward to working with him. He seems to be a good leader.
Thank you. And Melissa?
Sure. So there's been a lot said about how great Dr. Steiner is, and I really echo all those comments, but I'm going to try to focus a little bit more specifically on what's been impressive to me personally. I have seen him dive into our data in a way that is really transformative and really meaningful. And what I mean by that is that he will look at negative feedback and take steps to try to correct it. And I think that is a really exemplary leader. The other thing that struck me, we had a board meeting about a week and a half ago, and at the end of the board meeting, he said, in 5 years, I want Fargo Public Schools to be so great that people are flying all around the world to see what we're doing, and I believe him. And that's, to me, is why he's a good leader.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, next question, and this one will go to Katie. Gets this one first. North Dakota law requires schools to notify parents promptly if their child is socially transitioning to a different gender at school. Fargo Public Schools' previous superintendent refused to comply with that law. If a student asks school staff to keep a gender transition secret from their parents, how long, if at all, should the school honor that request before involving the parents?
Can you repeat just the very last part? I mean, I know what it's about, but what was the
Yeah.
specific question?
Basically, how long should a school, if it knows that a child wants to transition, how long before you involve the parents?
Sure, that's a good question. So I don't know if we have any exact timeline set on that particular question. In reality, it is our intention to never, ever hide something from parents. Dr. Corey Steiner functioned under this law when he was at Northern Cass, and he continues to do that here at Fargo Public Schools. What we do know is that each and every one of these situations is likely different, and that is why we have school counselors, and that is why we have school social workers who can then work with the students on how to approach this topic and how to talk to their parents, how to get that conversation started. So I want to be very, very clear that we are talking about a really vulnerable group of people here, and I think we need to keep this kid-centered. The number one thing we are concerned about is that child feeling safe, feeling like they belong, and frankly, staying alive. And so our school counselors and our social workers are the ones that are going to work through that situation with the student.
Okay, thank you. Jolene?
I'm going to ask you to repeat the whole question since it is
Yeah,
long.
sure. North Dakota law requires schools to notify parents promptly if their child is socially transitioning to a different gender at school. Fargo Public Schools' previous superintendent refused to comply with that law. If a student asks school staff to keep a gender transition secret from their parents, how long, if at all, should the school honor that request before involving the parents?
Sure. Well, I think anytime there's a state law, then it's up to the district to figure out how to implement that policy. So I would want to take a look at what that is. I think to Katie's point, yes, there is individual situations, but we also want our staff to have some guidance, so it's not necessarily an individual decision and they have some direction. So to answer that, I would want to, as a board, look and see what that policy says and how we would implement it so that we have a clear answer for our staff.
Okay. Carissa?
I would say the word secretive or secretly, I don't love that word. I don't love that phrasing. I would say because of that verbiage, I would say immediately. The parents need to know what's going on in their kids' lives. Educators they're supposed to provide a safe environment for people, for students to feel like they belong, that they are safe to learn, that they're safe. However, that is a very vulnerable topic, and as a parent, I would want to know immediately if there was a secret being kept from me from my own kid. So that's where I'm like, it's a very sensitive topic. Kids do need to feel like they are safe and they belong, but I don't think secrets should be kept from parents.
Thank you. Paul?
I agree with what Carissa said. I mean, secrets should not be kept from parents. Now, I understand that in certain circumstances that there may be, I heard the words staying alive, isn't it? And I imagine that in certain circumstances that may or may not be the what it is going on, but teachers are mandatory reporters. So if suddenly you've got this situation and then suddenly you're thinking about staying alive, hopefully there is a whole lot of information and documentation already in place that says that this parent in particular has been investigated, and we have actual, responsibilities towards saying, hey, I believe this parent is doing X. And then in that case, you may get to be one of those difficult situations. But I'm imagining, like most parents, they're concerned about their kids and they want to see what's going on in their lives, and they want their kids to have the best lives possible. So I want them to be told. I would want to be told as a parent.
Okay. Thank you. Next on this one is Melissa.
Sure. So, every situation is going to be different. Every family is different. Sometimes students don't even have parents. So I think we need to keep in mind that this is so context specific that it's probably not going to look alike in any two situations. But what I do want to emphasize is that I think that keeping the student safe and helping them navigate an incredibly difficult and exceptionally personal situation, I think should be of the utmost importance. As Katie mentioned, we have a lot of great resources. We have counselors, we have social workers, we have behavioral specialists in schools that can work with families and can make sure that this situation could be brought to the parents' attention safely and in compliance with state law. So, yes.
Okay, thank you. Greg, you'll have the last answer on this one.
Sure. I'm actually going to let Melissa have the last answer with this one because I thought it was very comprehensive and I would echo everything she said. So I'm going to take 30 seconds to go back to proficiency. And I just really want to point out that proficiency in a lot of areas in Fargo Public Schools is absolutely amazing. I haven't heard anyone yelling about 95% of our kids being proficient in social studies or 90% being proficient in music. So I just want to make sure I get that out there. But yeah, to the question, what Melissa said.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Jolene has the next question. Superintendent Dr. Steiner said in the past week or so that even younger elementary age students are bringing vape pens to school. What do you think should be done to address that problem?
As a parent who was just notified that there were vape detectors put in the middle school, I think it starts with education and working with our public health partners to educate our students on the harms, and as well as the parents as you start to look at kids are really smart. These are things that we didn't necessarily deal with as parents, and the what vapes look like, how it all works. Not something that I have knowledge about, and so I think that through education with the students, with the parents, and then some of those other tools is the place to start. And beginning with early elementary and following through high school is the place to go.
All right, thank you, Carissa.
When I think about when I was in school, you're always going to have that kid or some kids who are doing things that they shouldn't be doing, or bringing things to school that they shouldn't, and then a principal or a teacher would deal with that student. I think that it's problematic that we've got students bringing vape pens to school. I don't think that they should be vaping in general, but I'm not their parent, so I can't decide that. But I think that it should be addressed in schools. It should be taken out. Students of that age should not be bringing vape pens to school.
Thank you. Paul?
I think that the vape pens, we need to get back to an educational thing, because I don't know as if parents really understand. You talk about vape pens, but you can have a vape anything. Again, my wife's a teacher, and she talks about some of the kids. They have, instead of the string in their hoodie, it's a vape. So that they're always finding the newest and creative things in order to find these vape pens. I think what we need to concentrate here is on education. Education. What is a vape pen? What does it do? How does it affect their learning? And how do the parents help identify that their kid may or may not be vaping? Because back in school, smoking was cool, but that there's definite responsibilities involved with that and things that can get you wrong, go wrong in the future. And I think that needs to be expressed to the students and the parents and then the teachers, so that we all working together to keep vaping out of the school.
Thank you. Melissa?
Yeah, so I also received the same middle school vape pens or vape detectors in the bathrooms email, and I think that is one step, making sure that the school is aware of some of the perhaps hidden places that students are vaping. But I think this is an important issue because we want to keep our students healthy. We want to make sure that they are starting out with healthy behaviors from the moment that they enter Fargo Public Schools. And so I am always a proponent of education and making sure that families and caregivers understand that vaping is really dangerous. It's a terrible habit. It should not be in our schools. It's a distraction. My hope is that we can do this in a way that doesn't add more work for our teachers and staff, but I think it is an important health topic that should be addressed and hopefully corrected.
Thank you. Greg?
Yeah, I think obviously none of us want vapes in our schools, and I thoroughly believe that we can. We were able to prevent kids from bringing their cell phones to school. They are literally attached to those things, and wouldn't you know it, we were able to reduce that to basically zero. I have no reason to believe we cannot do the same thing with vapes. I don't think the problem is particularly widespread, definitely not as widespread as phones, so I see no reason why we can't do the same, strong education of what the law is, and then having a strong and uniform consequence that we apply to anyone who breaks those rules. Same thing that we've done with the cell phone thing. I have no concerns that we'll whip this.
Thank you.
Is
Okay.
it my turn?
Yes, I'm sorry,
Okay,
Katie.
thanks. I'm going to go back even farther than Greg. He's mentioning cell phones, but at one point in time, cigarettes were incredibly prevalent in society. The first time that I flew on an airplane, you could smoke on it, and that is absolutely unheard of now. Unfortunately, that took a ton of time and a ton of money, a lot of education, a lot of fines and penalties to get to a place where smoking is not nearly as prevalent today as it once was. And unfortunately, we're going to have to do that with vaping now. This needs to be a public effort, probably nationwide, to address this health crisis.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. Next question, Carissa, you'll get this one first. Superintendent Steiner has created a plan to help the district save $5.3 million. What do you agree with most in his plan, and where might you offer a differing opinion?
That is a great question, and to be very transparent and honest, I haven't looked at his plan, because from a financial standpoint, I'm like, 4.5 million, that is just a little bit of the money that we have. So to me, there's some, even though the argument has been made that we have transparency in our schools for the finances. If I were to get elected, I would argue that we need to see bank statements. For maintenance, we have $23 million going to maintenance. Maintenance matters, but do we have the appropriate stuff to do what we're doing in maintenance, or can we cut there? We've got, I want to say it's 9 or 8 million towards school meals. Is that truly going, so there's so much more in the budget that I'm like 4.5 is just scraping it, that I'm like, I wanted to dig deeper and see what are other people not talking about.
Okay, Paul?
I guess I wanted to continue that thought, and I wanted to draw a distinction between transparency and understanding. I mean, transparency, it's all out there. It's true. It's all out there if you can read through it and dig through it and understand it. The problem is, I'm not a financial genius, so I'm not saying, I can read all the numbers lined up on a spreadsheet. Luckily, I can get some help in different places. But, I mean, it's a matter of trying to understand, again, where's our priorities? Like, why are we not doing the maintenance that we should be doing on a school in order to keep that school functional for a longer period of time? I mean, we need, it's a good start, but what we need to do is, sometimes admit to ourselves that we need to make the hard cuts and decide, what is it, again, go back to the students. What is it we need for the students? What is it we need for the teachers? And just keep going back to that and saying, okay, do we really need this administrator?
Okay, thanks. And a reminder, when we hear the bell, you've got 10 seconds to finish up, just so we're all clear on that. Melissa.
Yeah, so Dr. Steiner's cuts represented about what our budget deficit was. So he was getting us back to a balanced budget. And I agreed with a lot of what he did. It's been mentioned before, but Fargo Public Schools is one of the largest employers in our community. About 80% of our budget goes towards salaries and benefits. So that is really where a lot of the cuts needed to come from. One thing that I would maybe have Dr. Steiner reevaluate is he wanted to do, let's say administration, teachers, and paraprofessionals. Like if whatever percentage of the staff that was, he thought that the budget cut should be commensurate with that percentage. Now knowing that our administration is perhaps a little bit heavier than some, I think we could have possibly taken a closer look at, are there other administrative positions that we could either sunset or look at? But overall, I think he navigated a really difficult situation very well.
Okay. All right, Greg?
Yeah, so to address the question directly, what good things were part of the budget cuts? Reducing administrative spending, I said that earlier. I won't go even more into depth. I think that's good. We need to keep going. Where I would differ, and I've shared this with him, is I wasn't pleased with how we changed some of our para-educator positions in the name of budget cuts. It was very little savings, and I think that was just used to kind of justify changing some of the hours of our paraeducators. I don't think a one-size-fits-all standard hours for any of our staff are good, because every school is different and every para's schedule is going to be different. And if a para can come in and give us 30 hours, I don't want to turn them away because they can't hit the 38 hours that we're asking for. And Carissa, our bank statements are in every single one of our regular board meetings. There's a link you can click and see the check register. Every transaction's there. Everyone.
Okay. Thank you. Katie?
Yeah, so in terms of what was done right, what went well, first of all, the reductions were spread across multiple areas. So that meant that no one particular program, building, grade level had to bear the brunt of this. Second of all, the decisions were not at all made in isolation. The planning committee was highly involved. There was input from principals. There was a staff feedback survey. There were cabinet discussions. This was not made in isolation. It was 100% a collaborative effort. What I appreciate is that it did not, at least it should not, impact our class sizes, that remained a priority, that our target class sizes for elementary, middle, and high school would go untouched. So I definitely support that. I would completely agree with what Greg said. There were some changes to how how paras can log their hours and get hours. Not a huge fan of that. I hope that's something we could go back on. If there is some wiggle room, I really truly hope that we would increase the number of adults that have contact with our students directly. If there is any ability to come back a little bit from that, that's where I want it to be.
Okay. Thank you. Jolene?
One of the things that anecdotally I've heard, not being a current board member, went well overall was the process, getting that engagement and input at the building level from staff rather than it being a top-down. So really engaging with and asking the folks who this is going to impact, what their thoughts are, looking at underutilized programs at all levels as well. So I think that piece of it has been really good based on what I've heard. I think, as everyone has said, when 80% of your budget is staff, every decision is very difficult. It impacts a face in the hallway, whether it's a student or an educator. One thing we heard about in our elementary school is people are really sad that fifth grade orchestra is going away. Perhaps at some point there's an opportunity to add that back in.
I'm sorry, what orchestra is going away?
Fifth grade
Fifth
orchestra.
grade, okay, thank you.
Yeah, but again, I also respect that the decisions had to be made to make sure that we balance the budget and support that ultimately.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Paul, you're up first on our next question. Mental health challenges among students have increased significantly since the pandemic. Is Fargo Public Schools doing enough in terms of counseling staff, mental health resources, and what more can be done?
Okay, so it gets into a little bit of a sticky subject for me because, again, I'm talking about getting back to students and teachers. Now, the teachers spend a lot of time in their classrooms getting distracted by that one or two kind of difficult students. And so in that instance, maybe having a mental health person pull them out of the class so it's not distracting the students. I mean, there's a little bit of disruption as they're getting removed, but at that point, the teacher can get back to teaching. But then at what point is there enough? Okay, so how many mental health people do we have to have? At what point does it become, okay, we've done our part here, now I have to turn it back over to the parent and say, hey, look, your student is not the little angel that you expect them to be, so now I need you to help step up and get in with the program and help find through whatever means are necessary to say, hey, your student can use some extra help that just the school is not capable of.
Thank you. Melissa?
Sure. I think one obligation the school has is to connect students with resources. We are not in a position where we can provide regular mental health counseling to students that need it. But what we can do is make sure that whoever is supporting that student, their caretakers and guardians and parents, understand the resources that might be available to them. One thing I did want to point out that I think is very promising is that our students' sense of belonging increased from 78% to 86% over the last year. And I think that is telling. I, of course, think that mental health is a very important issue. If you don't feel good, you can't learn, and that's a big part of it. But I think having students that are connected to educators, and in a lot of buildings, the number one goal is to make sure that every student has a trusted adult so that when they do see that that student is struggling, they can provide resources to them.
Thank you. Greg?
Yeah, I like what Melissa said about making sure that we connect students and families to the outside resources that are available to them, though it's also true that we do have resources within our schools to identify and address some issues. Fargo has one of the best counselor to student ratios out of any of our peers. So we actually have more counselors per student than most. It's absolutely not going to be enough to solve all issues. It definitely has to involve external resources, but Fargo's actually doing pretty okay compared to a lot of others. Where we're not doing as well is our psychologist to student ratio. We could definitely use another probably dozen psychologists, but pretty much everybody's bad in lowering that ratio. So it's really about the external resources.
Thank you. Katie?
Yeah, so are we doing enough? Well, probably not. I mean, can we ever really do enough for our students' mental health? That's pretty complex. But similar to what my board colleagues have said, we are doing some really, really great things within our school. I think a couple of things to keep in mind is we have a really great relationship with Nexus Path. We do have the Explorer Academy. We have Virtual Academy. These are options for students where the traditional classroom or building is maybe not working for them. We also have a couple programs in our school, one called BAR that was mentioned earlier. We have MTSS. They're different programs, but they're all about supporting the student and connecting them with what they need. So I think kind of similar to what Greg was saying, when we can, we connect them with support in the school. When we cannot meet that meet that need, we have phenomenal relationships outside the school so we can try to get the family and the kid connected to what they need.
Thank you. Jolene?
Yeah, I think it's difficult to understand where the line is in terms of the school's responsibility, families, because at the end of the day, they're all our kids and we want to support them. There have been some great models established in North Dakota that are continuing working with Nexus Path. Dr. Steiner at Northern Cass with some other rural schools established some partnerships where they would have counselors come into the school. So instead of a parent taking off work, having to drive there, the student missing more school, those types of partnerships of bringing the services in, using school-based Medicaid model, things of that nature, that we're providing those wraparound services, making it just a little bit of an easier bridge to get students the supports they need. School's not necessarily providing them, but through social workers, school counselors are helping to coordinate. I think those models have been successful, and some of them have been supported through Private Family Foundation and other grants as well.
Sometimes it's louder than others. And Carissa?
This subject is so sensitive, and it's my generation and below. Mental health has affected my generation so much because of technology, us being not as interconnected with our peers. So mental health is a big issue. But again, with what I know about money, throwing more money or more resources towards a broken thing isn't going to fix the thing. So we need to figure out what's not working. Why are our kids having so many mental health problems? I think that counselors, if it's out of the scope of the teachers are there to provide a safe environment for the kids to learn, to feel a sense of belonging, to connect with their peers, to connect with their teacher. And there's always some kid who's really struggling, and that's okay. The thing is, once that kid is struggling, I think that we need social workers, we need counselors to support the teachers, because that's out of the teacher's scope.
Okay, very good. All right, next question. This will be Melissa. Gets this one here first. Some parents have said publicly that they don't have enough visibility into what their children are being taught. What is your position on curriculum transparency, and what specifically should parents have access to?
Yeah, so I think as it was mentioned before, our curriculum is no secret, and everybody can have access to it if they want to. And I also think that we need to recognize that our teachers have gone through extensive training. They continue to do continuing education. They are the experts about the new trends and all of the state requirements about the best ways that students learn and how that should be done. I think it's important for parents to be engaged. It can be very supportive for a student to have a parent that is very invested in their education. So I think knowing what is being taught it can be very important, but I don't think that parents, unless they have their own expertise, should regularly be able to challenge what is in our schools.
Okay, thank you. Greg?
Yeah, I think our curriculum is transparent. We have open records laws. There's, like I said earlier, someone can request and they would get the whole curriculum. I know my wife, she teaches, she's a librarian. Her entire catalog of books, every single book that is in her libraries, you can request a list and you'll get it. Every single book. It's totally transparent. And even outside of open records requests, like I think it was Jolene who said it earlier, like parents, come in to just spend time in a school and in the classroom, and you'll be able to witness what is happening. Go to parent-teacher conferences. Visit me when you're done at the book fair, right? I don't know. I don't. If you're concerned about transparency, honestly, I don't know if you're looking.
Thank you, Katie.
Yeah, I would echo that. We are super transparent. So I don't understand where this narrative is coming from, that we're trying to hide things from parents or that they don't have access to our materials or what's going on in the schools. Truthfully, I think that's not helping the profession. If we want to recruit and retain our teachers, we have to treat them like the experts that they are. We know that parental involvement matters, and we absolutely welcome parents in our schools. We have parent-teacher organizations, we have events, we have volunteer opportunities. There's always ways for teachers or for parents to get involved in the schools. Do that. That's how you meet your teachers. That's how you meet the other kids and the other parents. Parents should always feel comfortable asking questions, but the bottom line is curricular decisions should be guided by the trained and licensed professionals who are educated to do that work. That is our teachers. They're highly qualified and they care deeply about student success.
All right, thanks, Katie. Jolene.
As mentioned before, Fargo and other districts have robust processes for selecting high quality instructional materials and curriculum. What I love as a Fargo Public Schools parent is the communication that I get from my kids' parent, or my kids' we're going on the second hour here, folks. From the school, whether that's at the elementary level, from Seesaw, or the newsletter from my middle school students, teachers. So they're telling us what's happening, and that makes the question of what you don't ask, what did you learn today in school? Because there's no answer coming from that. But it is, hey, I saw that you're reading X book, or you're learning about Y in social studies. Tell me about that. That communication allows me to be engaged better as a parent. And so when there's a question, I want to ask that question to my student before I'm questioning the teacher and what's happening. And if there's ever a question I think, well, that sounds a little funky, what's going on there? Anytime I reach out to a teacher, they respond right away. They let us know this is what the unit is on, here's what's happening, do you want to come in? We've just had such great explanation, and as a parent, that's helped me be more engaged because I know what's going on in there, even if I can't always get it out of my kids.
Thank you.
All right. Carissa.
I have so many questions because as a candidate for the school board, I have looked through so many of the documents on the school board's website and pages. And yes, so the Fargo Public Schools is a large district, so it is complex. So if I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt where they're not hiding things, I would just ask the question of why would parents have to request curriculum? I think that maybe that should just be published right away at the beginning, because that's what happened in college. We would see exactly what we were reading throughout the semester, and I think that should be provided to parents right away so they can see it. To me, I'm just seeing a discrepancy from me as a local person who's involved, also doing research. There's just a discrepancy between my experience of finding the information of curriculum and what the current board members are saying. And so I just think that if we give them the benefit of the doubt, there's a problem here. We need more, not transparency, but something needs to change, because what the public's experiencing and what the board members are saying, there's just too much discrepancy.
Okay, thank you. And Paul?
Yeah, I'd like to turn it a little bit too along the lines of, yes, transparency. There is a lot of transparency, like Greg said. Every check, you can review every check that's written in the school. The problem is parents are busy. Okay, parents are really busy, and so they're trying to juggle the things that they need to do to get their households going, but they're also trying to understand what's going on in their students' lives. So sometimes they're like, hey, I've got a question about whatever this curriculum just happens to be because I heard about it. And so they've got questions. And I think one of the things they need to be able to do is come to the school board and say, hey, I heard this about what's going on in my child's school, so can you give me some answers? That's sometimes hard too. I mean, you're talking about, one of the things that was talked about is open records requests. Have you ever tried to do one? I mean, they're a little bit difficult, okay? So, I mean, I think there's just a little bit of things that parents need some time, or they need someone that they feel that they can go to, and I want to be that person.
Okay. Thank you, Paul. I think we got everybody on that last question. Yeah. All right. Okay. Well, we are getting down toward the wire here in our time this evening. And before we get to closing statements, we want to give each of you an opportunity to draw a clear distinction between yourself and one or more of the other candidates on this stage. This is optional, but you might want to say, Jim, Bob, and Lisa have publicly said X and I believe Y, or I'm the only one who looks at a certain issue this way. If you choose to use this time, you have 60 seconds. There are no rebuttals here, but you can use your closing statement for that if you wish. Who would like to go first? Greg, you've been itching for this, so.
Oh, I've been making notes as we go.
Okay.
So.
All right, 60 seconds, Greg,
right.
Go ahead.
Cool. So I think what sets me apart, I think I'm not being too bold, but I honestly think I'm gonna be the best candidate here when it comes to data and numbers. It's not that other candidates don't have their strengths, but that's my strength, right? I do that literally every day, all day, professionally. I'm in data analytics. I will rebut Paul a little bit. He said being good with spreadsheets makes you a financial genius. I have no claim to being a financial genius. I'm just really good with numbers. But I think those strong finance and data skills paired with my desire for accountability and transparency are really good. One thing that differentiates me, but not from everyone, is my wife is a teacher. One thing that I do share with some of the people up here, but not everyone, is I've been endorsed by the Fargo Education Association. So I'm teacher approved. So I'll leave it at that.
All right, thank you. Anyone else like to have a word here?
I can.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess I thought we were going to have to.
Well, you don't have to,
so
Katie. It's your call.
Well, no, I want to go.
Okay.
I just didn't want to go second.
Gotcha,
But
okay.
I'll survive. I will survive. Okay. I think what sets me apart here is when I've heard comments from some of our other candidates, both here and in previous spaces. One thing that I will do, that I have done in my first term and I will continue to do, is I do not meddle in the schools. Board members do not choose curriculum. Board members do not choose books. I am a former teacher. I was a middle school and high school Spanish teacher. I would have been incredibly offended if a board member thought they could tell me what books and what curriculum I should be teaching my 7th grade Spanish teachers or students. I was the teacher. I had that ability to do that. I also think it's important to keep in mind that when you sit in the seat as a school board member of a public board of education, you represent all the families, all the students, and all the teachers. We have people up here right now that have made disparaging comments about Indigenous people, disparaging comments about Islamic people, and that has no room on a public board of education, none whatsoever.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I'd like to add, sort of similar to the start of what Katie said. I've served on the board of the largest nonprofit sports organization in North Dakota for the last 4 years, so I've worked really closely with parents. And similarly, the board needs to understand its role. And so when there's comments about how can we find the curriculum, what does that look like? If a parent contacts me as the board member and they say that they don't like what's happening at practice and what the position that their kid is playing in, I say, have you talked to the coach? Have you talked to their age group coordinator? A lot of times the answer is no. If you don't have a relationship and build that as a parent on the ground and work your way up, that is the most important thing. And as a board, we can always do more to create those and as a district foster those connections. But that is really the way that the board and the district should operate. And so I think as a parent, that's a starting place. And that's an approach that I've taken as a parent. And I think that's really important to remember, that we work on a policy governance as a board.
Okay. Anyone else would wish to draw a distinction?
I'll go.
Paul?
I'd like to start with the basic definition of insanity, which is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. So part of the reason why I'm running is because I've seen some things, like a couple of the things that I brought up, and some of them I've been shut down for, is, law breaking. Some of the things that have gone on our public schools and as part of our school board has been law breaking. And some of the people here have been on that school board. And so I guess the question I'm asking for the voters is, do you just want to continue with that? So if you like the way that things are going, yeah, that's great. But if you want to see something different, I think it's time to start looking at getting some different people in there. And then just as a little bit of a rebuttal myself, I said some, interesting things about data, and I don't want to just, say that I don't know anything about data, because truthfully, I was in the government, and trust me, I know how to read a government document. Some of those, the 2,000 pages, find out what's in it. I did that because there's a certain way that you have to go to dig the data in order to get it out.
Thanks, Paul. Melissa.
Sure, I'll go next. So we haven't talked about it a lot, but one of the most important things that the school board does is negotiate the teacher contract. I had the honor of doing that 2 years ago, and I think that was where I was able to bring some of my greatest strengths and assets to the board. We had a difficult budget, as I mentioned. We had a lot of requests from administration. We had a lot of requests from our teachers. I think what I'm good at is listening. I'm good at problem solving. I'm good at trying to get to the root of why somebody is asking for what they're asking for and to see if we can come to a collaborative consensus. I absolutely love doing that, and I think it's a good way that we can support and honor our teachers. So I would just like to say that, I guess.
Thank you.
Okay, very
Carissa,
good.
did you want 60 seconds?
I want to address the public because in my closing statement, I'm supposed to make a distinction. But I want to thank the current board members who are serving because it's a thankless job, it's a really hard job, and it requires a lot from you. I understand why people do not want to run. As a candidate who's running, I don't know. Like, this is a rough position to be in. You're answering to thousands of parents, and it is a hard job. So I do want to commend you guys for serving the public. Thank you. Melissa said it best. We need to come together as a community, and parents need to be involved in the kids' lives. Parents, go to the teacher conference. Read to your kids at home. Those small things really matter in your kids' lives and their development and their learning. My distinction would be something that I don't hear people talking about, and we as a broader community, it's not us versus them, it's not us versus each other. We need to think about what is the job of the school board members. Well, we are entrusted to keep the educators accountable. And so I don't have enough time for what I want to say, but the thing is, it is our job to serve the public and keep administration accountable.
Okay.
Thank you.
Not enough time.
Yeah.
All right, time now for closing statements, and you each get 30 seconds, and we're going to do reverse order, so we're going to start with Paul.
Oh, okay. First of all, again, I'd like to thank you guys for hosting this. This is a great way to get our message out. And, you know, it's hard to get the message out, and I appreciate the time that you're taking to do this. Yes, I don't claim to be politically correct. I'm sorry. If that's what's going to hold you from voting against me, then that's just the way it is. But I guess one thing it does say about me is that if you ask me a direct question, I'm going to give you a direct answer.
Thank you. Carissa, 30 seconds.
We need to develop a philosophy of education of what points us to the good, true, and beautiful. And I don't see that in our public school systems. I think that that's something that we could develop. The Nuremberg trials pointed to the fact that there is a moral law that supersedes the land of the law. So we need to be teaching our kids that. And what we will have to address is Islam in the next 15, 10, 5 years.
Thank you. Jolene, 30 seconds.
I am running for Fargo Public School Board. I support the district. I am not running because I am critical of it. I want to strengthen it so that all kids in our district have the same wonderful experiences that my kids have had. I have personal experience as a parent, but more so professional experience working on K-12 policy across North Dakota and directly with educators.
You have 10 seconds after I hit the bell, too. I apologize. Katie, you have 30 seconds.
Thank you. So over the past 4 years, I have worked to provide steady, thoughtful leadership for Fargo Public Schools during times of transition and change. I've helped lead a successful superintendent search and transition, supported long-term financial stability, built strong relationships with educators and staff, and remained deeply connected to our schools and community. I am running because I want to continue being a cheerleader for public education, a cheerleader for our teachers, a cheerleader for our students. Our students and educators deserve honest conversations rooted in facts and full context, and I'm here to keep delivering on that.
Thank you. Greg, 30 seconds.
Yeah, I would just ask listeners to, think, what do you want out of a school board member? And, do you want someone who has a proven record of balancing the budget without raising the mill levy? Do you want someone who understands data and multi-million-dollar budgets, who loves our public schools, spends time working in them, actually attended a public school? And do you want someone who trusts our teachers? That's me.
All right, thank you. And Melissa, 30 seconds.
Yeah, so I ran in 2022 because I believe that public education is the very best investment that we can make in our community. And so for me, it was the very best way to serve our community. So what I've done over the past 4 years, I've served as the president, I've served as the negotiations committee chair, I've had difficult leadership positions within the board, and I have built relationships with teachers, with parents, with stakeholders, because I truly care about every single person in Fargo Public Schools, and I want to continue serving them.
Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you very much. So this concludes tonight's Fargo Public Schools Candidate Forum. On behalf of WDAY Fargo, WZFG Dilworth, and all of Fieldstone Group, we want to say thank you to our 6 candidates tonight: Paul Moore, Melissa Birkland, Greg Clark, Katie Christensen-Menier, Carissa Geske, and Jolene Gardy for your time, your honesty, and your willingness to serve. I said this the other night with the Fargo City Commission candidates. You all are trying to get in the arena and make a difference, and that's admirable, and we appreciate you for doing that. Fargo voters, the election is coming. You have heard from the candidates tonight. Now it's your turn. We hope that you will make your voice heard and vote.
And stay with us. Steve and news reporter Austin Erickson will pick it up next with our post-forum coverage. We will take your calls and your reaction. Bonnie Amistadi signing off. Good night, Fargo.
From the candidates, now we want to hear from you. The Fargo School Board Post-Debate Show begins in moments.
It's Military Appreciation Month at Luther Family Buick GMC, and we're honoring those who serve with incredible offers. Head to the lake in a brand new GMC Sierra 1500 with 2.9% APR for 72 months and no payments until after Labor Day. Or choose from our entire Buick lineup with 0.9% APR and no payments for 90 days. Luxury, performance, and value all in one place. Luther Family Buick GMC, corner of I-29 and 32nd Avenue South in Fargo. We are professional grade.
Got a do-it-yourself backyard project and need just a little expertise to finish it off? You don't need some big box store. Go to locally owned S&S Landscaping in Fargo. They have the knowledge to help. Or if you're looking for a crew to do a landscaping project for you, the S&S team has the knowledge and experience to get it done the way you want. So if you're ready to improve your landscape or upgrade your equipment, talk to the team at S&S Landscaping. They can do it all so you can enjoy your space. S&S Landscaping in Fargo. They've got your back and your yard.
Redhawks baseball is back. Celebrate the home opening weekend sponsored by Family Wellness. It all starts Friday night against the two-time defending champion Kane County Cougars. First pitch at 7:02. Get your Redhawks magnetic schedule courtesy of Clean Response Flood and Fire Restoration. Kids enjoy inflatables from games to go, plus fireworks after the game. It's the home opener Friday night. Tickets at the box office, online at fmredhawks.com or call 235-6161. FM Redhawks Baseball. We've got opening weekend covered for fun.
Hey, it's Bob here from Lakeland. Now's the time to get ready for lake season and make sure your lift can handle changing water levels. With Raptor shallow water bow lifts, you can keep using your boat even when late summer levels make it tough to load and unload. Raptor shallow water lifts are built for extremely shallow conditions with no cross members in the way, keeping your boat accessible even when others are stuck. Don't risk cutting your season short. Visit Lakeland Dock and Lift on Highway 10 east of Detroit Lakes or Lakeland General Store in Dunvilla today.
Ballpark food? Covered. Cold drinks? Definitely covered. Business and group outings? Covered. Family fun? Covered. Friday night fireworks? Night out with friends? Unforgettable summer memories?
He's rounding third. He slides. He's safe. The Red Hawks have won it.
All covered. This summer, the Red Hawks have your nights covered, your weekends covered, your fun covered. We've got your summer covered for fun. Get your tickets now at fmredhawks.com.
For over 40 years, our family-owned business has been creating stunning outdoor environments for homes and businesses alike. S&S Landscaping is your go-to source for comprehensive landscape design and maintenance services. Our talented team blends creativity and plant knowledge to turn your ideas into amazing backyard sanctuaries and beautiful business settings. Taking on a do-it-yourself project? They have knowledge to help. Or let the S&S team get it done the way you want. S&S Landscaping in Fargo. They've got your back and your yard.
Mike Lindell and his employees want to personally thank you for your continued support of MyPillow. Hey, they've got a big allotment of their bed sheets that were earmarked for the big box stores this spring. Well, they did it again. The box stores did not come through, so they're going to pass the savings on to you. No, there is no middleman. So you're going to get wholesale prices on their famous Giza Dream sheets. Love these bed sheets. Queen size, normally $179.96. Your wholesale price is only $69.99. King size, only $79.99. Another amazing deal they're offering is on their premium MyPillows. Queen size, only $18.98, and Kings, just $1 more. So go to mypillow.com, use the promo code WDAY, or call 800-506-9028. Free shipping options available. So remember, go to mypillow.com, scroll down to the radio/podcast square, and use promo code WDAY, or call 800-506-9028 to get these amazing wholesale offers.
The candidates have spoken. The Fargo School Board Post-Debate Show starts now on WDAY Radio and The Flag.
We have had a chance to hear tonight from the 6 of the 7 candidates that are running for one of the 5 open spots. There were 3 incumbents here tonight. There are 4 altogether, but we will have one new school board candidate, a school board member, after the election is done. So the conversation tonight I thought was interesting and got a little more lively than I maybe would have thought for a school board forum. In fact, I think I can say this without telling any tales out of school, but Greg Clark said, "Hey, you guys let the city commission candidates challenge each other a little bit. Why do we get to do that?" And I had to chuckle a little bit. I said, well, you've got your time to do whatever you want to do. So definitely some differences between the candidates here tonight, and I thought it was an interesting conversation. I am joined now by Austin Erickson from our newsroom, and Austin was doing a great job taking notes, writing stories, and filing some audio clips from the event tonight for our news team and our programs tomorrow. Austin, I would just ask you, as you kind of were listening tonight, what your just general top-of-mind observations were on what you heard tonight.
So I was really impressed about talking about what the students and what parents will know about. I didn't think I'd hear about open records requests, something that I do in my job pretty often, and what people believe and what they think that the area's district should go in. Finances, very important. People talking very highly of Superintendent Dr. Corey Steiner and how he froze his contract, his salary. It's a small part, but it seemed like people were very happy that he did so.
I thought Corey Steiner might have been the winner of tonight's debate, if you will.
Well, he isn't the one that has to answer to voters. He just has to answer to the school board.
He seems to have made a very good impression on everyone tonight, and I think we've said many of the same things as we've had him in our studios for our programs as well, and certainly seems to be a gentleman 1 year in who's developed a lot of affinity and a lot of respect within the team as well. I always say with these sort of post-game shows, if you will, that the job of being a moderator and then being someone to kind of weigh in and analyze and say, I like this, I like that. It's difficult because I've never wanted to be one of those folks that does the moderating and you're being even and fair, and then to come on and start getting after certain people. So I like my position in this to be one where I say, here's what I thought was a notable moment and some of the things that were said tonight that I thought landed well, that I thought people made their point that were very clear. And I would say, Austin, if I look at the overall analysis of what we had here, I think you had, and it was extremely ironic to me how the stage setup played tonight. You had the 3 incumbents that were all, because of alphabetical order of their names, were all on one side of the table. And then you had the candidate who probably is most aligned with the philosophies of the current board members and who has had experience being in the schools in other occupations that person has had. This was Jolene Gardy. Who felt like she was kind of one of the gang without being one of the gang. And then you had Carissa Geske and Paul Moore, who were the anti-establishment candidates, if you will, the outsiders who said, we need to change things up, we need some different answers, we need to do things differently, better, whatever. So it was a really interesting dynamic that way. And I could tell that certainly at times, especially of the current school board members, the 3 of them, the incumbents who are running for their positions, I felt that was an encouraging dynamic for them because I could see a lot of playing off of gestures and nodding and so forth. And I don't know that anybody was cheating off of anybody else's assignment, but you could see people were writing notes close enough that you could have conferred a little bit with a colleague if you wanted to, as could have Carissa and Paul, because there was a little bit of an alliance there as well. So I thought that was probably the most interesting dynamic. Certainly the three that are the current school board members feel that they have a record that is strong that they can run on. And they're very proud of what they have done and what the district has done with them. But I thought, in fairness, they said some things too about, with administrative positions, we have gotten a little bloated there, and there's some things that we can do to take a look at that. And so I thought there were times that they had some candor to their answers, and I thought the same from Paul and Carissa as they said, we have ideas, we haven't been there. And I thought Carissa's kind of closing statement, which she had the opportunity to draw some distinctions, and more than that, she just said, I really appreciate that the board members who are on there have been in there doing that work, some thankless work at the time. So just some top of mind observations from what I heard tonight.
Yeah, in most debates, and maybe this is just like the legislature, the federal, like Congress and Senate, you don't really get many thank yous from other people that you're running against. But I think what you mentioned is a good point, that anybody watching this debate could see one side, and this wasn't planned, of where they were sitting. One side was the incumbents, and the other side were the people that were trying to get the spots. And there was certainly plenty of things talked about. Especially, I just interviewed Carissa Geske after the debate because she said something about Islam that I wanted more insight on, because she said she wanted to get more insight on it. So there was plenty discussed, and you could definitely tell. Some people were like, okay, I'm differing with the crowd. Paul Moore also said, there's a lot of things that's going on, and if you like how it's going on, continue to vote for these people, but I don't think it's a good track.
Yeah, I think that was a clear message from both Carissa and Paul, that the definition of insanity, and I thought this was one of Paul's more effective lines of the night. I thought it was a very clear, sort of passionate plea to people to say, look, if you like, definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again. So if you want to have the insanity that we have within the school system, then continue to vote. And so, of course, you have the candidates who would say, what we're doing is going well. And so, more of that insanity, please. And so that'll be interesting to see how those things land there as well. Fill me in on the Islam question, because I didn't hear that comment tonight as I was listening to the candidates.
So I will give you some insight, but I will say I talked quickly with Carissa Geske, and then I came back in here to do the post-debate show. She was saying we have to look into Islam, and I asked her what that means. And
she said that tonight.
Yes, she said that towards the end. She thought it was her closing statement, but that was right before her closing statement, probably the last 5 minutes of the debate. And she was saying, we have to look into the morals and what they teach and things like that. And I would have to listen to the recording again, because I quickly needed to ask her that and come back. So we'll definitely on WDAYradionow.com and AM 1100 The Flag have that, and I'll run that interview during midday. But it's something I asked her, is religion even anything? Because she brought up morals of Christianity during the debate, and I said, well, there's separation of church and state. Is this a topic that even needs to be brought up during a debate? And she basically said, well, when you're looking at how people are taught at home and what ideals they have, that should be brought to the table. So it was a comment I didn't think I was going to hear about, and I just thought that should have brought more clarity.
Was this a comment where she said things that are good, true, and virtuous, or was there
something
a further
along
comment?
those lines? And yes, and she was just basically saying, some of the ideals that Islam at its core teaches, are to be submissive and other things like that. That was in my interview with her personally.
Interesting.
So
I must have been looking for my next note on what to do, because I don't remember hearing that comment. So that's a good one, and this is a good reminder. First of all, if you have a comment you want to make about the debate tonight, I say debate, candidate forum is more accurate for what we had here tonight. But please do give us a call, 701-293-9000. Who impressed you tonight? Who lined up for the things that you want to fight for? Would love to hear from you. So we do have opportunity for about the next 10, 15 minutes or so before we wrap up our post-event coverage here tonight. So please let us know if you've got a comment or perspective or something that you thought really landed well here tonight. So that was a invitation we want to make sure that we got out here really quickly. I thought there was a little bit, we talked about some unanimity that we had with the appreciation for the job Dr. Steiner has done. You also could tell that there was some unanimity among what I'll call the four that were on the one side in regard to vouchers, and anyone who is in the current incumbent pool, and then Jolene, who has spent time in the educational system in professional work, said that these are this is a big deal, and there's no way that we can say that we're standing up for public schools while we're saying money should be pulled from public schools to boost what's happening in the private schools there as well. And I thought one of Greg's best lines tonight that I thought landed was, at least with public schools, you have accountability. And within the private schools, they don't have to publish their results or outcomes there. And he said, I think he said at that time, too, that there's one private school that does publish their results, and we do better in ACT scores than the private schools do. So I thought Greg had a strong point that he made there, too. When it came to safety, there was people took that question in a number of different ways. We asked, do you feel like the schools are safe? And I thought that was going to go toward the direction of armed shooters in the schools. It went more toward things happening with vaping and fights and things like that. But I thought Melissa Berkland, one of her strongest points tonight, was talking about when there was a situation at Fargo North a couple of weeks ago, and she said we had information and response right away. Dr. Steiner worked great with the police, and it was done flawlessly, she said. As a parent, that was really good for us to hear. So I thought that was an interesting point, and Melissa had a kind of a personal experience that helped her out there. What other observations did you have, Austin, from what you heard tonight?
Well, I'm going to continue with that thought first, saying that I was surprised also that it went to vaping, because safety in schools, obviously the safety of the health is important. Carissa Geske also mentioned schools being soft targets, and Greg Clark taking very big opposition to that.
Yes, weak targets, I think that was the term that was used. Schools are weak targets.
Yeah. I think just plenty of talk about their vision for the school, what they think. That I was glad that candidates brought up what they do for a living and who they're married to, and talking about how that goes into what how they make their decisions. I also like how they were talking about, I go in schools, or I don't think the school board should tell students or parents or teachers what to do with their children. They just should advise and get information. I think the argument of, should school boards, what is their involvement in the classroom? And a lot of the candidates said, I'm not going to tell a teacher what book they can have in school or what lesson plan they can have.
One of the interesting questions that came up as we were deciding on the list of questions tonight, questions about the questions, is how do we answer, or how do we ask a question on how schools approach helping a child who is going through a transitioning situation? And we thought it was important to ask this question, and I thought the most fair question to ask is, what is the appropriate amount of time? Because as we've known in the past administration, before in the previous superintendent, there was a position that from the superintendent's office, we are not going to, that is something we're going to deal with the kids, and the parents that's not what we're going to worry about. We're going to worry about the kids. So the question, and I formed this question in the end, was what's the appropriate amount of time? I thought Carissa's probably most memorable moment tonight was her saying that I think we need to immediately bring in parents there. Whether you agree with that or not, she took a strong position, and I think did not waffle on that opinion at all. She said, yes, we know that educators provide a safe environment, and as a parent, I would want to know immediately there should be no secrets being kept. And then the others, Paul said, I agree with Carissa, it's got to be something fairly quickly. And then I thought Melissa Berkland had a very good response after that. She said, look, this is such a unique situation, and every one of these has a very different context. We need to bring the parents in, but we need to have specialists that help with this at all. And I think that's what I was hoping to hear tonight, is someone to say, look, this is my day, if it's day 1, day 2, 2 weeks, whatever it is, but to say, where do you stand on that, and to balance all that out. And I think as a parent of kids who have gone through, and as I'm a huge believer in public schools. My kids were public school kids. I was a public school kid, believe strongly in public schools. I just wanted to hear somebody say, we can have honest conversations from different perspectives about what the right way to look at this issue is, but the parents need to be involved. And I thought there were some answers that were stronger that way, candidates that were stronger saying, yes, parents need to be involved. That's the beginning and the end of the sentence. In the middle, we say, what's the right? Is it a day? Is it 2 days? Is it a week or whatever? So I was glad to hear that there was a conversation today about parents matter and parents need to be involved here. And I also thought it was interesting that the safe word came up in that as well. And that is a big debate in itself, that word. And does that imply that parents are not going to have a safe environment for their kids? And I thought we might have a little bit more back and forth on that kind of in the closing minutes. But that was a question I thought brought up some interesting answers.
I thought that was going to take more maybe arguments on that one. But definitely, I think that's something that where the legislature, it's like, well, give us a timeline. Do we have a month? Do we have a week? I also am hearing that we have a caller on the line named Derry. Oh, he's gone. He's gone. All right.
Okay.
But definitely that's something where it's like the legislature maybe should have taken more of, do we give them a week? Do we give them a month? Do we give them a discretion? That it's definitely a difficult topic because it's hard enough to go to school. And then it's definitely difficult when you're trying to figure out who you are in school. But I wasn't surprised by the answers that we got because it's in any situation, it's teachers, administrators, principals, superintendents, school board, or school, the student that all need to be involved in a lot of different situations.
Yeah, I liked the difference of opinion we had today in a number of different questions, and I thought the question about Dr. Steiner's budget. The question was, what do you like about what he said or what he's proposing, and then what would you push back on him a little bit about? And I thought the current incumbents obviously are more tied into that and are going to have more details on it. But I was encouraged that all three of the incumbent candidates pointed out something that they would politely differ on.
That's always
sometimes sometimes, and we've seen this within the school board, and this is my editorial comment here, that when Rupa Gandhi was the superintendent, it felt like nobody in that board would even dare to say, well, maybe we could have done this. It's clear that Dr. Steiner seems to be more comfortable with those kind of conversations, and all three of them took a moment to say, yeah, there's something I might fight with them a little bit on, and I was glad to hear that.
Yeah, definitely. You always want to make sure that the candidates, are not always 100% with someone. We actually do have Darius back on the phone line, so if we can bring him up and hear his comments.
Yeah, hey guys, thanks for taking my call.
Yes, sir.
My comment is kind of on that topic of the kids transitioning and keeping the secret from their parents. It seemed like Carissa and Paul were the only ones that actually gave a direct answer to that question. The incumbents kind of danced around it, and you would think that they would have a clear, concrete answer for that now. As a father, to children in the Fargo Public Schools, I appreciated Carissa and Paul giving a direct answer to that, so we know exactly where they stand.
Yeah, well said, Darius, and I tried to summarize that a little bit earlier. I thought the incumbents wanted some flexibility there, whereas Paul and Carissa had a very direct and kind of a firm answer what they wanted. Darius, thank you for listening, and thank you for calling us tonight. We appreciate you making us a part of your evening, good sir. And that will wrap up our post-event coverage here tonight for the Fargo School Board candidates. We do appreciate all of their time tonight. And Austin, thank you for a little extra time. And thanks to our team behind the glass as well for making it all happen. Steve Hallstrom, Austin Erickson, signing off. Have a good evening, everyone.